Welcome to Jacked Up Politics, where we work out current affairs for you.
I'm Tom, I'm a second year BA History and Politics student.
I'm Logan, I'm also a second year BA History and Politics student.
And I'm Jack, I'm a second year Government and Political Science student. So, in this week's episode 4, we're going to be talking about referendums and why referendums are so important to society as a whole, and why referendums mean a lot to help change the constitution, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. So, Tom, we're going to start off with you today, and we're going to ask you your thoughts on the referendum, and Logan, we're going to then ask you your thoughts on the referendum. So, Tom, go right ahead.
Well, gosh, it was a very interesting referendum, wasn't it? I think after Kenny Shannon referendum got rejected in 2011, he said, "Oh, the government has gotten a real walloping." Well, I had the Kenny impression. And as Leo said, well, the government got 2 wallopings this week. I'll stop with the impressions now, but I mean, look, it's a fascinating one. I mean, it was the largest no turnout in the history of the state. I'm looking at the figures here. The care referendum was rejected with 74% of people choosing to vote against it. The family referendum goes to 68% of people. Now, why were they rejected? There's a couple of reasons. Right. The kind of common line that we're hearing here is it was legally vague and people didn't know what they were voting for and chose to vote against it. I think that's true to an extent. Now, it's also possible that a lot of it was a protest vote against the government. People just didn't like the government in general, and they wanted to see the government get egg on their face. I think that may also be a reason, but I think a large part of it as well, maybe people just didn't want it, right? Like, I was chatting to a woman outside the polling station in Carrigtwohill where I voted last week. She was conducting an exit poll, and I asked her, and she said the largest reason was a lot of people simply did not like what was being proposed. And in addition, I can see what the government were going for, holding on International Women's Day, but in hindsight, they're probably going to see that that was a very ill-timed mistake. Logan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel like my thoughts don't really differ that much from your, Thomas, if I'm being honest. Like, I feel like the referendum failed for, I want to say 3 key reasons. One, it's like you said, the very vague language in the proposed amendments themselves. 2, I feel like it was one of those referendums that wasn't inherently life-changing, right? It wasn't something like the gay marriage referendum or
the abortion referendum, both which had massive implications for Irish society.
Yes. So like when you really look back on it, despite, let's face it, the language of the Constitution still being quite sexist in its regards towards women, like no one was being disaffected by it.
Yeah.
Inherently. I mean, like, I could be wrong on that, but like the fact that this wasn't like this big, massive, game-changing thing, right?
I know what you mean. The other 2 really affected the face of Irish society.
Yes. And the third reason, and I feel like this is honestly probably the most popular, the government just isn't popular.
Well, people wanted to see them fail. They wanted to get that relish, like.
Yeah, I would say that, or that was certainly a factor anyway. Again, like we talked about this in the populism episode, but it's the same case as David Cameron and the Brexit referendum, right? You know, like David Cameron was a man who advocated to stay in the EU and to more or less keep everything as it was. But Cameron's government, like combined with a myriad of other factors, just simply was not popular at the time. And
people wanted to just say, oh, you're a Catholic.
But yeah, kind of, or at least the current administration, or like who was in power, which was, Cameron. But... And I feel like
interesting point.
I feel like it was kind of a similar case here because, like, you know, practically everyone from all sides of government were voting. You know, we're asking for a yes vote, and let's face it, like, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil are not really in their stride
at the moment. No, I don't think they are. Jack, what do you think?
So, my opinions on this on the 2 referendums that just took place were the government did not push them enough as they should have done if they wanted them to succeed. Secondly, right, it was a cluster bomb of a situation. They just did not know what they wanted to achieve with it. It was they said, oh yeah, we want to do this and we want to do that. In actuality, I think it was a PR exercise and a PR stunt for the government to see how well they were trained polling. And I think they got their arses handed to them, being honest.
That's fair. I mean, does it bode well for the local and European elections later this year for the government? I don't think it does.
No.
But you know who I do feel like this honestly bodes well for? The results of the referendum. Now, before I say what I'm about to say next, I need to stress this point. There are the vast majority, I feel, of people who voted no in these referendums were, completely everyday normal Irish people who would be more or less, despite their distaste for the current government, aren't really overtly highly involved in politics to any sort of like far right leniency or far left leniency or anything like that, right? People just, again, I would say the vast majority of people who voted no were people who were just like, hang on, this is a bit too vague, or this thing hasn't really negatively affected anyone as of yet anyway, and never has.
Yeah.
But when you look at the people who were inherently pushing a no vote, like there were tons of people who were normal and just campaign, just saying like, hang on, maybe this isn't such a good idea. But when you look at, I guess it's staunchest advocates, right?
Right.
A lot of them tended to be on the sort of like hardline right. You saw the likes of Grip Media like highly pushing a no vote, and again, they weren't responsible for the reason we got a no vote. Of course not.
No, they weren't.
But if anything, I feel like the results of this referendum could maybe incentivize like more of the far right, because like unfortunately, I'd hate to say it, but like I feel like the far right is definitely more on of a rise, and I guess if the far right more or less kind of associates themselves with this win, because this would be considered a win in their playbooks.
Oh, I think like the thing is, right? I think the right wingers will be galvanized by this result.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But I do not believe it's a massive win for them.
No, it's not a massive win for them, because realistically, this just shows that people are unhappy with the government, not that they want a far
right party.
Yeah. I didn't mean to insinuate as such.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. The thing is, a lot of people who voted no for this are actually quite liberal-minded. Like, you look at the exit polls, people say, well, actually, yeah, I voted to legalize abortion, but I just didn't understand what was going on here. And I mean, I've heard people say, changing the constitution wouldn't actually affect the running of the country and the laws of the country. Of course, it would. Foundation for all legal documents in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you look at, constitutional law cases from the 1970s, two very prevalent ones being the McGee case and the Ryan case, I looked them up if you have the time. Those cases were determined by the language in the Constitution. So, I mean...
They were?
I think people, I think a lot of those saying people didn't understand them, I think at the same time, you can't treat people like idiots as well. I think while people didn't understand the language, they understood that it could have had far-reaching legal consequences if passed.
Yes.
And I think that's what I would say on it.
Like, the problem with it was Roderick O'Gorman went to the Attorney General for legal advice on what defines a durable relationship.
Mm.
He said, oh yeah, I'm not going to release the advice of the Attorney General. What did he do? He released the advice of the Attorney General against government advice, right? He was advised by the AG not to release it, and he released it. And I think as well that he's going to suffer in the next general election as a result.
I'm surprised he hasn't lost the party whip.
Yeah, I'm very surprised as well. Like, I know this episode's supposed to be about referendums and stuff, but I have a feeling that this referendum will actually begin a snowball effect for the current sitting at it all. I think this is the 33rd?
Third.
Sitting at it all, right? I wouldn't be surprised if by June we're looking at an election, because it's a case of people are growing unhappy with the government by the day. And just recently enough, right?
Yeah, 33rd Dáil, yeah.
Yeah, the 33rd Dáil, right? Consensus after this is that the government tried to put a lot of blame on the far right.
Right.
And they tried to put a lot of blame on opposition, right?
And the opposition tried to blame the government.
Exactly. But here's the thing, right? Is it was the government's own bloody fault.
It was.
No one else but the government have to hold their hands up and go, yeah, we screwed the pooch on this one. It's our fault, no one else. Right? But the fact of the matter is they will not accept accountability. Because if they accept accountability, it means then they have to accept they messed up. And that's the thing with right-wing governments like Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. They will not want to accept responsibility if they mess up.
I'd be hard-pressed to call them quite right-wing. Perhaps on some aspects of economic policy.
Yeah, they're not exactly like I wouldn't. Yeah, no, I'm in complete 100% agreement with Thomas here. They're not exactly as hardline conservative as you would see the Tories in the UK or
centre right, perhaps.
Oh yeah, no, definitely centre right. But
what I do think is, look, Varadkar has been adamant that a general election won't happen until 2025, early. Look, if circumstances beyond his control electorally determine it, it's not too far-fetched to think there could be one this year.
It's not too far-fetched. No. Absolutely not.
So you may have a point there.
Like, I think what's going to happen is...
Although I would say I don't think it would be in like summer or June. If we were to have a general election this year, I definitely wouldn't say it would be like summer or June.
Do you think Q3 or Q4 maybe?
Maybe, like that's definitely more likely, but I can't see...
Yeah, but I don't think they want to mess up the local European election. Duh.
Like, it's a case of... I think the government are living on borrowed time.
I think this referendum kind of felt like heads I win, tails you lose for the government.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like, it was a case of, if they lose, people are just going to keep saying that they were useless anyway. And if they win, they were going to say, yeah, so what, they did some minor bit of good while they were in.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
you know, it's a case of as well that, like...
But I feel like, but again, like, I guess it's like you have to kind of imagine it's the exact wording of the amendments were one of the core reasons that it failed.
Yeah.
Had it been more clear and decisive about exactly what it wanted, we may or may not be looking at an entirely different result. So I'd hate to say it now, but if both things passed with like a 100% yes sort of thing,
right? Could
we maybe really sit here and say, hang on, this may be an inherently good thing for the country? Because again, it's like you said, in with legal documentation, like things could be much more harder to define. Or
I mean, it's not really a surprise the Law Society was advocating for a yes, but that's more work for them.
Yeah,
had it passed.
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is, it is the Law Society of Ireland, right?
Now, I do respect them.
Oh, I do as
an organisation. Oh, they do very good work in many areas.
They do. Constitutionally, they have done a lot of work for making sure the common man is represented, you know? And the thing about it is that this referendum was an absolute mess of a situation, right? I think what needs to happen going forward is there needs to be a clear consensus on how the government can improve on certain topics and making sure that any message they put out going forward is clear, it is decisive, they hold a firm position on it. The problem with this referendum was they were tiptoeing around and saying, oh yeah, we're going for yes, you know, it's very good and all this. And in actuality, they should have been going, vote yes, it's the best choice for the country.
I think they didn't make their case beyond reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
It was illegal.
Exactly.
Like, and I feel like that was kind of like what I was trying to say there, just it wasn't.
Exactly. And because that reasonable doubt existed in people's minds, didn't pass.
No. Okay, so what we're going to do, folks, is this episode was going to be a short one anyway, just about the referendum. So we're going to wrap it up there now shortly, and the next episode we're going to be bringing out to you in 2 weeks' time is, drum roll please, my friends, where's the episode list gone? So I'll be taking a break for the next few weeks because I have to go in and have surgery. So for next couple of months, I'm going to be leaving you in the very capable hands of my two lovely assistants, Tom and Logan.
Yeah, but that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Get used to hearing more of our voices and not Courtney's. So I'll be back in a few months' time after the surgery. But until then, the next couple of episodes, the first two episodes that the lads will be bringing to you is Ireland and the HSC, how Ireland's healthcare system
has failed to adequately serve the public. And public transport in Ireland, fact or fiction? So, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of Jacked Up Politics. And Tom, Logan, I'm leaving her in your hands. I wish you the very best of luck, and I will talk to you in a few weeks' time.
We promise not to drive her into a ditch.
Yep.
Thank you very much, lads. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
But even consider it such, no, you'll stand tired. Sat and watch from the sidelines one too many times. Wicked games to play, make me wanna lose my mind. Found solitude, knowing it'll be over soon. Ever need a boost, count on me for the 1-2.